it was fascinating to me that the I would say Hays Code. I think gentlemen prefer blondes is in the Hays Code too, but the the 30s to 60s movies where these women are portrayed, they don't, none of the ones I found were they at all interested in the man as anything other than uh you know uh I'm not even sure, right? It's like now that we've been talking about him, like
The Kindle. They want the Kindle. They don't actually want to
it was
provide
a
and a
Ken doll kind
protector.
of
They
thing.
want
I'm
the
not even sure
Kindle.
what they
Yeah.
want, right? It's like because they're just sort of interested in, he's coming at, they're, the men are all like sexy and coming after the women, and look at them and are interested in having them. But the as you've been saying, it's like there's no reason for these people to want to be together other than sex, which we're not allowed to show on camera because of code. So in fact, these movies, which are
Mhm.
apparently about these independent women and these Rock Hudson guys pretending not to know how to seduce women, it's still all only about sex. There was nothing. There's
Mhm.
no family. There's no love. There's no. It's whether or not the two of them can figure out how to get each other to have sex.
Yes.
And they're not really
Yes.
courtships for the most part. At least these ones that I was seeing. Um, and curiously, not very emotional about anything. This is a curious place to even. It's like I've spent
Mm.
a whole week sick watching movies with no emotional content.
Yeah. Yeah, I was struck by that when I was watching Dreamwife.
Mm-hmm.
It was like shocking to see zero attempt at portraying the negative emotion associated with the breaking of an engagement. They were up 24 hours later, back to work, back to business as usual.
Mm-hmm. So whose
Very, very
fantasy
strange.
is this, right? This
Mm.
is like, so we'll say we're gonna have to go look at the writers, oh my goodness, and the movie producers and the who's making these movies, and the problem that we have of, okay, if the only characters that we can think of, either the Godfather or the Addams Family, are gothic and weird or Catholic. Um, it,
I think I found a pattern.
could it be? Could it be? I mean, what you were saying before about the Empire, yes, it's this. I mean, the Dream Wife was so overtly that. It's the whole
Mm.
relationship that the Bukistani princess has is going to be for the Americans about whether or not her father signs the trade deal.
Yeah.
And the irony of it being that they're portraying the Bukistani as traditional, and she's raised only to please men. But the only reason the Americans care about this is not whether or not she's being used, but whether or not her
Mm.
father will stick with the government arrangements over the oil.
Yes. So yeah, they've accused the Bukistanis of being backwards, but they're uh, more Oriental than the Orientals somehow.
The mirror effect is so intense here. It's like, which way are we looking? Who's being mercenary about what? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas in 1980s, Adam Sandler was uh, it was just that was they were purely emotional, completely pure, in like zero decisions made in terms of like a
Mm.
business arrangement. It was discussed in the film. They didn't avoid that, which I enjoyed about it. The discussion on the idea that men are supposed to be providing, that was specifically discussed in that movie, to the credit of the producers of the film who put it together,
Mm.
because they show the traps there. It's a very difficult thing to navigate. You don't want to end up with a broke wedding singer who's not able to give a life to you that is secure for the sake of raising children. At the same time, you don't want to be with Greg Goulia, who's the finance guy, marrying you just so that he's marrying someone who's not getting at him for his money.
Right.
So he's playing business. It's like the finance guy wants to play business and get a woman who's not playing business. And that's what I liked about that narrative, is it shows that kind of double standard as well, that the men are very conscious of the fact that it is a business arrangement, or the element of marriage being an element of marriage being a business arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
But when women are overtly saying this out loud, they become gold digging whores. Whereas, so women are expected to have this deeply emotional fantasy version of what it's like to be in love and getting married and having the white wedding and everything. But the moment they start to project their desire for security, we're getting, you're not very feminine, this is terrible. You break the fantasy then. That I think this is why Gentlemen Prefer Blondes was so brilliant, because it was so out in the open, and yet the fantasy wasn't broken, because it was admitted in that story that it's a fundamental part of the entire business of getting married. The business of romance is business, yet she doesn't want that to be primarily the reason for getting married. She wants the resources so she doesn't have to think about the resources. Right. It was cleverly done. It was very cleverly done. And not a lot of these movies are discussing this. It's like either the guys are really wealthy and it's like, oh, I don't care, I don't want to discuss it because it doesn't matter to me, which is a load of crap, because they would be. Right. They wouldn't be dating, he wouldn't be the lead unless he was rich. So they disprove their thesis immediately, just by always having wealthy, successful, ambitious men as the leads in the films. Wedding Singer had a completely different situation. It was like, okay, we'll get into this. We're going to discuss it. What exactly are we doing here? Is it pure business, or is it pure emotion and pure romance, or is it a little bit of both? And like, how do you navigate this as a culture? Because if you go in either direction, you end up with no wedding. You end up with no families being created, because it's not sustainable, and it's not sustainable in either case. If you're only marrying for business and not love, you're not going to keep the family together. You'll end up with like Reagan levels of divorce. If you're only marrying for love and you can't handle the finances, you won't keep the families together, because families need the finances. They need the provision. They need the protection. So I don't know. It was like, I think Adam Sandler did a good job. Like that movie was a good look at, okay, what are we actually doing here? We've gone through, you've gone through like this period of time in the West where it's like, okay, we're all equal, but we don't want the equality really, because we still want to have the white wedding. We want to have this fantasy of the big cake and the dresses and the speeches and everything. But what are we actually doing when we're talking about love in the West now? It was cool.
I realize I have no idea by this point in our discussion. Like saying where no, it's like, where is my idea of romance come from? Because I can't seem to locate it in any of the examples that we've been watching. And I have, I have a very clear fairy tale version of, it couldn't be Disney movies. We know that. As I'm thinking, some of it must come from romance novels. Maybe we need to put, like, is there a genre level here, right? Of it's happening in the stories that women tell each other, or are women being just as dishonest with ourselves, except for Marilyn Monroe's character in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes? Or wait, yes. No, is this Gentlemen Prefer Blondes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Yeah.
That somewhere the source of the fantasy version that both the men and the women on the internet are fighting about is now elusive. Could be advertising.
I don't think, I don't think that the people that I've been talking to online, I don't think they actually themselves know what they want that isn't fiction somehow. Right.
But we're not even sure now where the fiction is located, except in the Addams Family.
Which I still think is like magnificent prototype of like trad life. I think it is magnificent. Multi-generational household with a devoted mother who stays home and you know, homeschooled children.
So Casey's saying the finance guy was buying an arm charm. Marilyn was using her charms to get a financially stable guy. What was the difference? Exactly. I mean, I think that's why Kiltz is saying the movie makes that. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, Mel suggests, as our ideal. Well, you know, I think we do want to do another stream, not when I'm rom-com full of memory, about Mary. And I brought up Mary and, you know, Casanova reading Mary of Agrada's version of Mary. Maybe there, I was like, where exactly our image of the ideal is coming from is interesting and complicated. It could be something, it could be in, you know, Mary of Agrada's 4-volume story of the Virgin Mary, although that was only translated to English in the 20th century. So maybe. Casey, How to Marry a Millionaire is a good movie to watch for this question. Okay. And then Silent Draco, I can pick an apple all by myself. Oops. Wait. So I think we're in this weird place now of having surveyed one place where we thought the ideal should have been hiding out and didn't find it quite where we thought it should be. It's not in the early 20th century, and it's certainly not under the code, because that's just as much guideline code that they tried to subvert over and over and over again as any other time. And it is interesting, therefore, that these are the famous movies. This is Cary Grant and Rock Hudson and Doris Day, and the ones that got to make movie after movie after movie after movie, right? I could keep going. I still have more of them that I could watch. Maybe this weekend when I'm still recovering. And they made lots and lots of these movies, and yet they're not carrying the romantic premise that we are constantly thinking they ought to have been.
No.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense to me why there was so much rage when I was saying what I was saying in the chats, and also why everybody's been very quick to jump on the Andrew Tate version of masculinity, because I'm not really sure everybody knows which fiction to reference.
Exactly. We don't even know what story we're trying to reference.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, you know, not only are you, you know, in the ghost story now, but you're actually already living the more romantic version of the story than you thought you were from the period in which you thought that they were living the romantic story. You know, that our own longing for this romantic fulfillment and stability in home life, it's interesting. It's really very much ours. So let's think about, as a living, breathing human beings who aren't having enough babies.
Oh yeah.
How to cultivate it in our own lifetimes.
Yeah, we got to figure it out, or we're going to have a population collapse.
I think we're actually already having the population collapse, but seeing it start, it started before I was born in terms of the mythologizing. We better start now. Because to encourage,
we need a baby boom.
Do. And these are baby boomers watching these movies, and they ended up with not enough babies. So we really, and the storytelling clearly has teeth. So we need to work on figuring out better stories.
I wasn't expecting to come out of this episode blaming Doris Day for the collapse of the American population. But I'm going to do that now.
Que sera, I can't sing it. Que sera, sera, whatever shall be, shall be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera.